Good morning, or wherever you are in the world and whatever time you're watching this. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning. My name is Dani Maupin, and I am speaker at Basecamp 2024 for SketchUp's Sketchbook, which is pairing SketchUp for iPad with other apps to free your inner designer. And welcome. So the table of contents for today's agenda is about me, who I am, what I do, why I do what I do, why I've chosen to do what I do, what drives me as a person. And especially in this case, why iPad is such a big part of that and why I could not get by without my iPad. Very briefly, we will touch up on how I use programs such as Procreate, Morpholio, Nomad, Canvas, etc. in using my SketchUp on my iPad to help them free my inner designer. I won't go into too much depth about each program in general, just because this is not about how to use those programs. This is about where to find programs that may or may not help you personally. And then the majority of this presentation, of course, is going to be my personal workflow, because I believe that where I lack in architecture and or engineering skills, woodworking skills, such, my personal workflow is what makes me unique to this community and somewhat of an interest to you as a SketchUp user. So who is Dani Maupin? Dani Maupin is me. I have recorded this intro probably 6 or 7 times now, just because I do not like talking about myself. I do not like bragging about who I am or what I do. I think it's weird, and I feel like I'm the kind of person you kind of have to come across to get to know. Uh, there are some important things about me that I can discuss. I am a theatrical engineer, which is not any kind of engineer of which you're familiar. I specialize in rigging and stage design for theaters. So anything that flies overhead or is mounted or walked on by actors, any kind of actors flying and whatnot, I can do fly lines, I can do temp lines, I can do counterweighted houses and such, etc. And it's where my passion lies and what I like to do most. It allows me to be creative in ways that I don't normally get to be when I'm helping people design their porches or their decks or houses or redoing their bathrooms. Because as much as I want at some point in my interior design career to install a purple toilet in someone's house, nobody wants to have a purple toilet in their house, and I don't get to unless it's for a theatrical show and it's less daunting. I can't blame them. I don't want a purple toilet in my house, so why would they? But it's so much more fun when I can go to a theater and design a pirate ship or something that's completely different than I would get to put in somebody's house, which makes perfect sense. There is something to note about me that I don't talk about very much, but I feel since a lot of people watching this may or may not be wondering why I'm not currently eye patched. I have what I like to refer to as an acceptable amount of brain damage, and that has resulted in a neurological vision impairment. Both of my eyes work great individually by themselves, chameleon style. My brain has a hard time putting both of those images together, and so which results in a lot of double vision. And this occurs mostly when things are very close to me within my arm's depth field of vision, or if they are a bright light like a computer screen or these obnoxious lights or the sunlight or anything like that. I find it so much easier to block out one of my vision inputs, one of my eyes, with an eye patch if I need to get things done but I know are going to cause me to not be able to focus or see what I'm doing. But I'm okay today, so we're going to try it without. Halfway through, we'll see what these computer screens do to me. I have my own freelance company called Canary House, and the URL up here will lead you to my website, which currently is admittedly better suited to computer screens than mobile devices, which is ridiculous and something I need to attend to, but busy schedules and such. CanaryHouseArt.com is the website. CanaryHouseArt@gmail.com is the email for that, if you are interested. When I realized I thought there was a presentation for me to give at Basecamp, something that made me uniquely me and was shareable amongst the community, I asked fellow SketchUp users on the forum what they thought was about me that made me unique and worth paying attention to, not being an architect or a proper engineer or a proper woodworker. And one of them said that I moved outside of the microcosm, and that kind of stuck with me. I do not work within what I would consider to be traditional techniques of drafting or what anybody would expect. I push this program to what I think it can do and how I think it can work through interesting moments of design. How can it be unique to you and unique to what you're doing? This particular image is one of the first things I ever did after picking up SketchUp for iPad, uh, was to try to recreate Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers on in 3D and still maintain some of the textures and interesting portions. The freehand tool in SketchUp with the pen made this so much easier and quicker than I ever could have thought it would be. Having worked both in a theater setting and in people's homes, there's a huge difference between what is imaginable and what is buildable, and then also what is something people actually want to see. I tend to use it a lot in a concept art style. How can I flesh out something 3D that may or may not help the story we're building in whatever instance in theater or such? I like that because I can use it in this fashion to help figure out how I might build something. It also allows me to figure out from every angle what something might look like. This is not something that people are unfamiliar with in SketchUp. I have yet to come across something that I couldn't learn how to do, but only after lots of practice. And you can't be afraid to practice. You have to continue to do things that you didn't know you could do before. The spool there on the sign is a series of fantasy buildings that I did. You may or may not have seen the smithy. That was one of the first things that SketchUp asked me if they could use in. I don't actually know where they used it, but people said they saw it later. The weather vane down in the bottom corner was the weather vane on the smithy itself, this blacksmith building. I do know that those directional portions are not in the right positions. I started with north and then I had them all lined up flat in the SketchUp model. And I got so stuck on the S trying to figure out the design and shape of it that I decided to skip to the W instead and then go back to the S and never rearrange them before I stepped them on there. And I am decided to leave it because I think that it's a part of the original art. The chicken pirate blimp balloon there with the forest planting nonsense that it does was a challenge by one of the SketchUp staff members that I took to heart and decided I could do that. I can make a pirate chicken blimp balloon. And I learned a lot from making that balloon too. This smithy house was designed to try to challenge the snapping inferences. How could I make things just slightly crooked, just kind of crooked, and softening edges of beams and such, like this one up here. The fire truck I did very, very early on, probably before the blacksmith house. And the teapot was an exercise that I performed trying to see if I could easily clean warehouse models. A lot of that came out of the warehouse, and I cleaned it and redesigned it for my purposes, to see if I could do that efficiently and effectively. These were things that I had realized in modeling that I didn't do as well as I would like to do. And therefore, it was going to be imperative that I learn how to do them if it was possible even to do them. How could I change up the finished look of my work? And how can I make the program work for me in new ways? Resulted in this strange series of drawings, which this is just one of many, but this is the most effective one, where I modeled something and then set it up almost in a box diorama in SketchUp itself to try to get a finished image that could be usable as concept art or development art of some kind, and ended up with the model inside of these 2D cardboard cutouts with my textures down here that ended up working very well, I think. It ended up getting used as a development piece for another project. This brings us to why iPad. I mentioned earlier that I have this neurological vision disorder that does not allow me to sit in front of computers for a long time. I also have a nonverbal autistic 6-year-old child of whom I am the only parent. And he does not allow me to sit in front of computers for an extended period of time. And so I had developed over the years a system of working in Procreate, which is a sketching, drawing computer or sketching program in iPad. That meant that I could sit on couch in the same room as him with my iPad on my lap and work on that until he came over to me and then easily set it aside and give him my full attention. And it also helped, I realized at that point, with my vision disorder, if I started to get what I refer to are as rubber band cramps, it feels like rubber bands are pulling my eyes together, I could set it aside and give something else at a distance my full attention for a couple minutes until my brain calmed down. And iPad became very instrumental in this, and Procreate became very instrumental because not only did I have the ability to pick it up and set it down much more easily, I could work in rooms that made my son more comfortable, that made myself more comfortable. I could work with colors while sketching. That made it so much easier for me to not have paint laying around or markers or anything that kids or cats could get into. So iPad became a very, very instrumental moment in my life, especially having the ability to free myself from my mistakes, that I could go onto job sites or theater sites or see things, take photos with the iPad and then draw right on it. You've heard all of this from other SketchUp iPad enthusiasts or just iPad enthusiasts in general. Having all of your drawings and references and images, taking them right along with you to these work sites, to these job sites, to these meetings in front of clients. The ability to open it up in front of a client and make adjustments right there in front of them. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't want your toilet facing left. Let's make it face right, which would be a weird way. So, let's rotate it 90 degrees on the wall. That's not actually flip it towards the wall. Time lapses of your drawings, reiterations, drawing in ideation. They're still a mess, like I said earlier. The way I work, I have finished documents instantly on sites. And I think, and I like to think the world thinks, that because iPad is already so intuitive and so easy to use and so portable, that it's only going to get more and more useful from here on out. The people involved are only going to keep listening to the users and figure out what we need. I mentioned that I had already been living in Procreate, basically just doing all my drawings and sketches. Here are some works that I had done exclusively in Procreate for children's books, for theaters, as backgrounds for LED walls, that kinds of thing. And I had become what I consider to be pretty prolific in Procreate, pretty efficient. I like to think my finished products were just as effective as anything I'd ever done in paintbrushes or on Adobe Photoshop in the past. I was working as a plumber and interior designer when SketchUp for iPad first came out. And I immediately thought to myself, this is a program I'd used to use a lot. And it's a free version that I never took the time to sit down and get to use because I'm too busy running around in theaters and such. But on iPad, since I'm already carrying my iPad with me everywhere, doing everything on my iPad, I might as well give this a look. I had this sauna in a bunker project that was a very important project for a very important person. And it was kind of like the stepping stone into, I have about 50 other projects I need somebody to do. Can you handle my sauna in a bunker project? And if so, I will hook you up with a bunch of work. And so it was very stressful, and I wanted to have some very, what I considered to be professional looking documents and not just my drawings and sketches, which had gotten me by up until then. I sat down to learn the program. I bought a subscription to SketchUp Go, and I immediately realized I was doing things incorrectly. I realized that I couldn't do a lot of the very basic things. And I very quickly understood that following basic SketchUp tutorials that had nothing to do with iPad was going to be just as effective as following iPad tutorials. And I remember taking my first messed up model into the forum and having somebody help me. And Dave, of course, sat me down and was like, okay, you're being dumb. Quit doing this transparency thing. And helped me work out my whole transparency issue with why materials were focusing on one side and not the other. From that moment on, I devoured the forum. I downloaded anybody's model that posted one, tried to figure out how to fix the problem they were having, tried to figure out how to clean their models, how to clean the the warehouse models, how to do all these things. I did all of the SketchUp Essentials 20 whatever days to modeling. I can't remember how many days it was, but I did them all on the iPad. And anytime I realized I couldn't do something on the iPad, I had to figure out why, because I was sure it could do it. The airplanes were because I realized that I was having trouble rotating things in SketchUp for iPad. And it actually started its own book feature in the SketchUp for iPad forum about the rotation feature and about how it wasn't working the way people thought it intuitively should. I practiced and practiced and practiced. I made Lego models. The one down in the corner there is the Ghostbusters Lego house. And the very base, I started creating all the Lego pieces for, just to test how much my iPad could handle geometry-wise, and then learning how to tag and group things so that all the tags were on at the same time, but that Legos made from specific pieces that matched other pieces could be tagged differently without being the same components. Practicing SketchUp for iPad made me very, very comfortable using it in public, in front of people, and to get things done effectively and efficiently for my job. If you can think of something you would like to do on your iPad, somebody's created an app for it. It doesn't matter what your use case scenario is. Somebody has created an iPad app that will help you do what you need to do. You just have to look for it and be willing to experiment with some things. This drawing here, this bathroom, is my bathroom. It doesn't look anywhere near this good. Right now, the tub is in this corner with a little wall that goes all the way up with a 1-foot cupboard that's like 3 feet deep because it's the tub. And then this is the toilet, and this cabinet is much bigger. It's the stupidest layout for a bathroom ever, but it's also the only bathroom I have. So I wanted to see if I could make a much more cohesive and understandable layout. But it also led me to discover there was a way for me to use the programs in my iPad to make a much more painterly feel, a much more artistic, watercolory, artistic feel. Having worked in theaters and having worked in people's houses, I've come to realize that some people respond better to the architectural SketchUp model, here's the corners, here's the ups, here's the downs, this is what it looks like. And some people respond to, here's what it could possibly look like in the future with a little bit of emotions, drawings, these artistic renders. We have the basic line SketchUp model, followed by the draw over I did in Procreate. And if you have the SketchUp for desktop, which I do not have SketchUp for desktop, I went a whole year without using it, so I never renewed. I just have my Go. That you can actually get this artistic draw over style without having to trace it yourself. Then I did the watercolor drawing underneath that, combined with all of them together for this cute little artistic drawing. The people that are better than me and architects and better at this kind of thing, James Akers, I believe he's actually at Basecamp this year. He's the one that you can learn like how to from, not just get inspirational information. Henry Gao, Eric Reinhold at 30by40.com is somebody I watch a lot, especially on YouTube. I watch all of these on YouTube. And Dani discusses mostly theoretical and thesis style topics regarding architecture, but also has several videos on how to use iPad for architects. And also all 4 of these, I believe, have stamps and documents and drawings that you can buy and download from them that you can then use in any of these programs or specific programs, and they're not that expensive. My basic take is there are 2 programs, Morpholio and Procreate, that are very, very useful right now for architects. If you just want to draw like an architect, lean towards Morpholio. And if you feel even the slightest bit like an artist and want to be a little crazy and have a little more control over what you can and can't do, just hand drafting, lean towards Procreate. Morpholio has a monthly sub or a one-time purchase. Procreate has the one-time purchase, currently $12.99 USD, and I bought it. I don't know how many years ago. It's like 5 iPads later, so it could be 10 years ago that I bought Procreate. And I bought it was like $8. So it wasn't down off that much, and they never charged me 9 cents. So Which brings us to the thing that I promised the most earlier, was my workflow and how I use Procreate to create what I consider to be my finished documentation, which is what you're looking at here in this wheelbarrow unit surfboard variety. This was a finished document that I handed off to a design meeting for this particular show, which was, I believe, in Irvine, California. When I was wondering what was unique to me and whether or not it was worth talking about, this is one of the images I get the most questions about. How did you do this notated style of finished document the way you did it? And we like the way it looks, and it appeals to a theatrical design crew. It appeals to homeowners. It appeals to people in general, not being just a line drawing. It is also, it gives a finished feeling to it. So I started in Procreate with wave drawings, and when they're small like this, it's hard to tell that they are different, but they have 4 different textures on them for painter styles. Once we had chosen a wave style, I took it into SketchUp. I created a plane in SketchUp that was flat and existing, and then I traced it out with the pencil, the graphic underneath, to get the shape, and then cut that shape out and then applied the graphic as a texture. Then I cut it up into pieces so that you could see where each piece was. And I did this in SketchUp, cutting it up into each piece so that I knew how to build each one. You can see them cut up here into individual pieces. I blew them out to the side, positioned it where I liked it, put the background color to gray in SketchUp itself, and then took screenshots. I have not practiced recently exporting JPEGs or PNGs or whatever imagery from SketchUp into saved files. But at that point, about a year ago, I feel that screenshots were a much higher quality image than anything that I was able to export. And so I basically relied on screenshots a lot to get things. That I would then open those screenshots and Procreate with the background color matched and position them that way. These are the 2 finished images for this particular unit, the wheelbarrow unit, that were given to the scene shop. I was not about to specify specific sizes, but it allowed the scene shop to focus on what was important. Like a lot of other digital drawing programs, you think of Procreate much like a series of acetate sheets, and each sheet has something else written on it. These secondary images that are smaller were screenshot taken in SketchUp, and they were brought into Procreate, color matched, and then their opacity was lowered so that they were not as bright. And I don't know that you can do that in SketchUp, and that's where Procreate helps me. Here are some of the finished surfboards on stage in front of the LED wall for that particular show. I think it turned out great, and they look so much like what I designed. It was so much fun. Here's another one that I did, and it was a sketch for it was a theater show called Last Resort, Final Resort. And it was about a retirement home. It was funny and sad and fun and laughing, and it's a theater play. It's all kinds of emotions. I started in Procreate with a sketch. I knew kind of what I wanted, and it was just faster for me to draw it out, because that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, than to get it a SketchUp and try to function through. Once the Procreate sketch was approved by the director, who was all on board right from the beginning, thank goodness, then I took it into SketchUp. I have a model template in SketchUp for that particular theater that has the dimensions of the stage, the proscenium, backstage right and backstage left, which have that height differences, and allows me to just start modeling right away. It has all their stock scenery and what they have for curtains and where their fly bars are. It's something that I created painstakingly, and they do about 16 shows a year, so it's very helpful to have a template for that particular theater. I have about 4 theaters that I keep templates for, and the other ones I will model the theater basically around it really quickly just to get the right dimensions. And I took that and I brought it out here, and I labeled some things and did some more notations for the costume designers and the scenic builders and whatnot, who I am actually the main scenic builder, so it's mostly for me and my assistants. And then here's the final product. Now, the final product was built in 4 days because this theater has a 4-day turnover. So from scratch to finish, you get 4 days to finish. And I did not quite get to finish the textures on the walls and on the breakaway portions of the wall, and opted instead for a color fading look. Ironically, I used pink insulation foam, and then I set the assistants to painting it a dull gray color, and the dull gray color turned out to be the exact same color as blue insulation foam. And I was thinking I should have just used blue, except I don't know. You will notice, however, that in this one, I got to keep my flagstone floor that I had originally drawn here and not the floor that we were discussing halfway through. The SketchUp model was screenshotted and taken out of SketchUp back into Procreate, where I then applied a mask to the outer layers here to make the color start to diminish. And you can see that here in this map where the color starts to fade to gray at the edges. And that was done in Procreate. I don't believe that's something I can do in the SketchUp program itself. I don't always do all of my details in Procreate. I do draw over SketchUp models quite a bit in Procreate, but sometimes it's just easier to draw things like this truck's menu, the $5.99 sign, the Paco's Tacos, side over the little door and such right in SketchUp, because that pencil, this ridiculous tool right here with the iPad, is invaluable for me as a hand drafter. This is another theater set that started in Procreate with this drawing of the desert background, and then I never took the SketchUp model any further than a white raised up portion of what I intended to build. And then in 4 days, again, this is that 4-day theater, so we had 4 days to get this off the ground from scratch. I really like the way this one turned out. They have a tournament every year to decide which of the sets was the best. They have all the things. It's the mini Oscars. They call them the Jeffreys. The owner of the theater is named Jeffrey. And the audience and season ticket holders and actors who've seen every play vote on their favorite everything. And this one actually won Best Set this year, which was nice because it was my favorite set that I did that year. I'm the only person who did any of the 16 sets at the theater this last year. So I was just competing against myself. And while it's nice that the one I liked the best one, I was competing against myself. I do rough design boards using a combination of screenshotted SketchUp models and drawovers in Procreate. The leaf texture on the tree in the whiteboard there is in Procreate, but all of the SketchUp models and the trees themselves are SketchUp models that I screenshotted and pulled out, with the exception of the leaves drawn on the top of the bottom one. And then this board over here is a lot of Procreate SketchUp combinations. And this play has yet to go up, so I do not have any finished product images of this. I also do shop documents for the carpenters. I spent several years in Santa Clarita. I lived in Santa Clara, Santa Clarita, Santa Ana, Santa Clarita, California, as what's fondly referred to as a translator for the Carpenter Boys. And I was working in my own theater, designing my own sets and building my own sets. And then on the weekends, I would go to one of the big scene shops and I would sit in the corner and they would hand me chicken scratch on a napkin handed to them by a designer. And I would translate this chicken scratch from design speak, which was usually somebody who didn't quite understand gravity, into something that could be built by a carpenter for a reasonable amount of money and not kill actors. And I use SketchUp for that a lot. What you're looking at here is the overhead of the studio at Western Stage. And this is a turntable that they were building, my design. And it had a wall that was stationary in the middle and stationary here that floated over the edges of the turntable so the turntable could rotate. There's a door here and a door here. They wanted the floor design for what this floor was going to be painted. And then we also did the turntable here with the dimensions of, I think it was supposed to be 16.5 feet across, because that was the maximum they could get away with in the studio space and still be ADA compliant. And then we came up with the best way to cut the lumber to save, because it was 2 layers of turntable on upturned Euro throw casters, to save the amount of lumber and not have to waste too much. So we came up with this, and then I took it into Procreate and wrote on it, redlined it, and changed the top layer of, brought the image in twice, changed one of the images to red, and then erase the portions of it I didn't need so that I could have red line work for this particular image. I absolutely adore SketchUp for iPad. The first year, just SketchUp for iPad. And then I ended up upgrading my subscription to the Pro so that I could have the desktop. And I used the desktop twice. And both times was so I could use Clockworks to make bedspreads and whatnot, and then never used it again. So the next year I thought to myself, why would I have Pro when I don't need the layout and I don't need the other applications involved? I've already created so many things and not used extensions at all, and I haven't really felt hindered or hampered by this. So I realized I just needed SketchUp for iPad and Procreate, and I can go about my daily business very effectively, very efficiently, and very uniquely artistically. And I thank you very, very much for your attention and for watching this all the way to the end. Happy SketchUpping. Bye.